Hello everyone and welcome back to the Bantamweight Boxing YouTube channel with me, your host, Michael Waite. Hope everyone's doing well. Hope everyone's had a good week so far. Wanted to jump on here, make a quick video because another huge Saudi card has been announced. Well, actually this one isn't happening in Saudi, it's in Los Angeles and it is part of the kind of Riyadh season and is set for the 3rd of August. There are loads of big fights on this card, so I'm not going to run through all of them, but I'm going to take some of the big headliners and the ones that are interesting me the most. Obviously, the big headliner officially for this card is Crawford versus Makhachev, and then we've got some other big fights. The other notable that I'm going to talk about in this video are Andy Ruiz versus Gerald Miller, and we've got Jared Anderson versus Martin Piccoli. So let's kick it off with Crawford versus Makhachev. I think that is a wicked fight. It's not probably getting the hype that some of the other fights on the card are getting, and that's kind of understandable. I think Crawford is probably the favourite going into this fight, but I think it's still going to be a super interesting one. You know, Crawford is moving up to 154 pounds, which is the junior welterweight division. Obviously, side note of this, we're being teased about the potential fight between him and Canelo. You know, Crawford is sneaking up in weights, and I'm sure they're going to try and make that Crawford-Canelo fight at some point. But that's for another video. But yeah, with this fight, I do think it's interesting. It's a new weight for Crawford. He's obviously moving up in weight, fighting Makhachev, who is someone who's more natural at this weight. Makhachev is going to be the bigger and younger fighter in going into this one. You know, Terence Crawford now is 36, I believe. So, you know, he's not a spring chicken. He's been around for a while. So there's always that kind of element to it, you know, in terms of strength and the physicality, can Makhachev utilize that? Also, with Crawford, he has now been out of the ring, I believe, for, I think it's over a year since the Errol Spence fight. So there's been, you know, a lack of fights. So, you know, you don't know how fresh he is going into this one. But saying all of that, you know, Crawford was going into the fight with Errol Spence and he was the bigger man and is probably technically better than Makhachev as well. And we saw what Crawford managed to do there. So obviously Crawford's still the favourite, but I wouldn't sleep on this fight. I think it would still be an interesting one and a good test for Crawford. But now, moving on to the fights that have really gripped me, and this is all around the kind of the big lads, the heavyweight division. The first one I'll talk about is the Andy Ruiz versus Gerald Miller. I love this fight, and I love the card as a whole. I think, before I get into this fight, the card is insane. You know, some of these fights that I've listed, they would headline a card on their own and there'd be nothing on the undercard. The fact that we're getting all of these fights on one card is ridiculous. You know, shows the state of boxing at the moment, the best it has been for a long time. But yeah, before I get distracted on there, let's stay with Ruiz versus Gerald Miller. Yeah, I think this is a really interesting fight. For me, what I look for in a card is obviously you want the best to fight the best. That's, you know, that's standard. But then if you can't get the best of the best fighting, what I want is 50-50 fights. Ones, you know, fights that I'm making this video now, and before the video I'm thinking, I just don't know who to back there, you know? And that's what I love going into a boxing card. You know, there's been so many cards in the past where you can just predict it from the get-go. You know, it's a 80% chance this fight is going to win, and maybe they could pull off, you know, a spectacular, you know, the opponent can pull off something spectacular, but you know how it's going to run from the get-go. Gerald Miller versus Andy Ruiz, I've got no idea how that's going to go. Obviously, looking at Andy Ruiz to start with, you know, had one of the best, you know, one of the greatest upsets in our generation, beating Anthony Joshua. But that was, his fights with AJ were back in 2018, 2019, a long time ago since then. And after those wins, there wasn't really much done with the career there. You know, he's gone on to fight, I think it's Ariola. You know, I can't believe that was even sanctioned, or Ariola's still alive. And then Ortiz, you know, you can say the same thing there. Who knows how old Ortiz was or is when he was fighting Andy Ruiz. So 2 wins there, nothing really to gloat about, nothing we can really analyse there. So, and then you look at Gerald Miller, again, still a bit of an unknown entity. Obviously had that fight with Daniel Dubois recently, and that's what everyone's kind of focusing on. I thought he looked quite good in the Daniel Dubois fight. I thought he, brought it to Dubois, took a lot of punishment, walked straight through it. His stamina was surprisingly good for his size. So he's an interesting fighter, and he's not going to be an easy night's work for Andy Ruiz at all. But with Ruiz, we know what he has in the locker. We saw what he did to AJ. His hand speed, he's got the punch power. If he can bring any element of that to the fight, he's going to cause Gerald Miller some problems. But yeah, I think this is a really interesting one. They're both big lads. They're both rocking around, 300 pounds or whatever it is. They're huge lads. There's not going to be a ton of movement, I imagine, in this fight. They're going to be throwing hell for leather. I think it will be an absolute war. And just after that performance against Dubois, I feel like I'm leaning towards Miller. I just feel like I saw some real hunger in that fight, but yeah, we'll see what happens there. But again, I feel that is a super 50-50 fight. And then finally, looking at Jared Anderson versus Martin Bakole, that is a cracking fight. Again, as I said, could headline on its own. I'm super interested in this one, and it's come as a massive kind of shock, really. Jared Anderson is kind of the American hope, really, for their heavyweight division. They've obviously had Deontay Wilder, but they want that next heavyweight who's going to run the division for the next 10 years or so. And it seemed that Anderson was going to be the guy who was going to do that, and they were going to build him up really slowly. They've looked after him so far. Fairly nice fights. What's his biggest win so far? It's I've forgotten his name. It slipped my mind now. It's the guy that AJ beat for the world title. I'm not going to stay on that, but yeah. Beat him, not an incredibly impressive performance. A lot of the guys he's fighting, I know, aren't particularly hard hitters. So he's kind of been protected in that sense. And then he's just been thrown in with Martin Bakole, who is a top 10 heavyweight. Make no mistakes about it. We saw what Bakole did to Takam, who is a gatekeeper of the heavyweight division. But, you'll look at him, most heavyweights will struggle to get Takam out of there. And Bakole was able to do it with ease. So Martin Bakole is game. He is a live heavyweight and will cause any of the top 10 problems for sure. And you're putting him in with Jared Anderson, a prospect who you're building up. And I like Anderson. I think he's fundamentally looks very good, throws a lot of punches, physically looks great. He's got power and all of that. So looks like he could be, a great heavyweight in a few years' time. But this is going to be a real test for him. And it seems as though his team have kind of thrown him in the deep end and said, look, shows what you can do. You're either going to make it or you're not. We want to find out kind of soon. And Martin Bakole is going to be a great measure of where he's at. But yeah, I'm definitely leaning to Bakole on that fight. I think... But we'll see. We'll see what level Anderson's really at. But again, a cracking fight, a real 50-50. Brilliant card. But yeah, let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Are you interested for this one? I'm gutted. Obviously, it's in LA. It's surely should be. They're all American fighters. Going to be a late one. Waking up for it in the UK, but definitely going to tune into this one. And finally, if you like this video, do drop a like and subscribe. We're on the road to 200 subscribers. So yeah, jump on the bandwagon. And hope you enjoyed. See ya. Bye.